Because the former Russian President Mikhail Gorbachev is among those who've suggested that last week's elections in Russia were so suspect they should be run again. What does all this mean for Vladimir Putin and his plans to return to the presidency? Dmitry, I mean, there's demonstrations in Russia this weekend and by Russian exiles in other places, or Russian immigrants to other countries. How significant do you think all that is?
It's extraordinarily significant. No one was predicting anything like that in the past, and the sheer fact that 30,000 people, depending on who you believe, some people say 60,000 people demonstrate in the streets of Moscow today, and indeed in other places in Russia and in Europe and in other continents, is extremely important. I think we need to take step back and understand what has been happening in Russia in the last 10 years under Putin. So we are talking about, potentially, we're talking about the tipping point towards which the middle class probably has become dissatisfied with the way the public accord between the government and the society has been struck and has been run by the government and indeed by society. Because essentially what was happening is that middle class now probably is saying that enough is enough. We understand that the elections have not been run according to the rules or according to any democratic rules indeed. So we want to at least say what we think about it. Because in the past, Putin and the government was just saying that we allow you to grow fat, personal fat, we allow you to prosper, essentially, whereas as long as you don't mix in politics. And what has happened to my Twitter feed lately, or my friend's feed on Facebook, is astonishing.
Really?
The whole society, well, at least, you know, this chunk of society, which I at least can see from London. I visit Russia, you know, 6, 7, 8 times a year anyway, so I can take the temperature, I guess, and it has changed a lot. So people have become extremely politicized. They have become extremely active when it comes to at least showing their position. The amount of what we call retweets, shares on Facebook of people of blogs on the Russian blogosphere is tremendous. BBC Russian service website got about 1 million unique users on a particular day this week, which is probably twice as figure over a normal day, and all political websites in Russia. And also you would need to think that the more society prospers, the more middle class grows in Russia. That means that less people tend to believe what they see on telly, and more people go online to get their news. And because the news on internet spreads so fast, it's easy to organize themselves, it's easy to actually show your position. And
we're talking tens of millions of people doing this, or?
No, not really, not really. We still need to understand that the society at large, the country at large, is still probably pro-Putin or pro-government, because they have seen, what they have seen is they have seen a lot of stability over the last 12 years.
Which was very important, given what happened before Yeltsin.
I always remember I always quote this sentence from the Russian statesman of the Tsarist time, Petr Stolypin, who said that Russia needs at least 20 years of quiet life, and that it could really make a big leap to catch the world powers, as it were. And I think, if you think about it, so Yeltsin bombed the Russian parliament in 1993. After that, we had relatively 20 years of stability, but in Russian terms, we still had Beslan, we still have things like Chechen wars, and we still have had notorious things like Magnitsky murder and things like that. So a lot of things have been happening. Middle class was not paying too much attention, or at least wasn't able to be vocal about those things. Now it seems it is.
It's quite an extraordinary story, isn't it?
But he brings out the amateur historian in me. That's brilliant. Yeah, it's in a way back to the European Union comparison. You've got a triangle here. You've got the state and the elites. You've got the democracy and the street, admittedly only a middle class, important distinction, and you've got the markets. And we know the history of Russia. We know who wins ever since Ivan the Terrible in the 16th century. The state wins, the Tsar or the Communist Party. And here you have a situation harder to control: Facebook, Twitter, repression. The world is watching them. It's much harder to repress in the dark, which the Soviet Union did for so long, and you wonder who's going to win, just as you do in the Arab Spring.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
I was going to mention the Arab Spring.
Well, except, I mean, you know, I don't live in Moscow, I live in London, but everybody who look closely at the situation say, you know, don't get excited, guys. It's not the Arab Spring, because look at the opposition in Russia. look at the figures, even if it was cheated, even if the voting didn't go, wasn't democratic.
Yeah.
We're talking about minute figures. They are fragmented.
Yeah.
We believe in the West. Kasparov is, would be a fantastic alternative to Putin, but who does in Russia? I mean, it's a very small minority.
Who's the leader?
Yeah,
Who's the leader?
The problem is that currently we're probably only seeing the start of something which could be more significant in the years to come, or maybe in the months to come. But the sheer fact that it hasn't happened in the last 12 years, it's already significant. But you're absolutely right, democratic opposition is so fragmented and probably has so much discredited itself in the eyes of common, ordinary Russians who have probably associate or still associate the democratic way of life with all this chaos of early 90s. Putin brought stability to Russia. Believe it or not, we can judge this sort of level of stability or the concept of this stability. It's one thing, but your point is about irregularities and the votes being rigged. I think it's very important to stress that it's about minute figures. It's not very, very widespread.
Yes. Is Putin worried about these 30,000 people on the streets today?
Well, I think if the governmental party loses about 100 deputies in the current government, it's worrying. It's absolutely worrying. That's why he wants to distance himself now from United Russia.
Just to be clear, even under an election over which there's a cloud, it was a very, very significant vote against.
Well, yes, of course it is. And a lot of people voted against United Russia just to vote for communists, to vote for another parties who ended up being in the parliament. And we're only talking about 4 parties, actually. And if you look at the other runs, they didn't even get above 3%, which would have led them to the party. So I'm thinking that we are talking about start of the galvanization of the society. Society starts to think about its rights, about the new agreement with the authorities, that sort of thing, and that's why it's so significant. That's why Putin needs to adapt itself.
The big question which all outside governments have to face is what to do, what to say, whether just to shut up and let these things work their course. And I assume that it will be rather shut up about it.
Well, no, I mean, Hillary Clinton did come out and say that that she felt the elections were, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, a disgrace or something like that. But it's not a lot of noise. However, countries like the United States, Britain, other countries would like there to be a less dictatorial rule in Russia because for commercial reasons. We've seen what's happened.
We need to take a very cynical view on that, and actually foreign governments do take a very cynical view on that, because ultimately it's about oil, it's about gas, it's about doing business.
It's about oil. Have I heard that?
I was going to say,
we want to stay warm. It's cold.
It is a refrain we've heard very much. We've only got about 30 seconds left. This could also just fizzle out, though, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could. What we need just to see what happened before March, because the presidential elections are in March, and we need to see how Putin behaves in the next few months.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Dmitry, thank you all very much. And